Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really painful but incredibly common modern digital dating phenomenon. It happens to millions of people every single day, and we're going to dive into exactly why it happens, and more importantly, what it actually means.
One day they were there, texting constantly, making you feel like a real connection was happening. And then nothing. No fight, no explanation, just silence that never ends. In 2026, digital convenience has quietly weaponized one of the oldest instincts in the human brain, the instinct to flee from discomfort. Today we explore the real psychology of ghosting and why disappearing has become easier than ever before.
Let's jump in to Section 1, The Instinct to Flee. Subtitle, The Path of Least Discomfort.
Okay, so let's reframe what ghosting actually is. It's incredibly easy to view a sudden disappearance as an act of intentional, targeted cruelty, right? Like they are actively plotting against you. But clinically, we need to look at this as a psychological pathogen. Fundamentally, it's just an avoidance behavior. The person disappearing isn't necessarily plotting your demise. They're simply taking a primal route to escape. Think about the internal mechanics of a real breakup. Even a brief, respectful conversation requires sitting there, tolerating the intense discomfort of disappointing someone and absorbing their emotional reaction in real time. It's heavily taxing. In fact, neurological studies show that anticipating this kind of social conflict lights up the exact same regions in the human brain as anticipating actual physical pain. And this brilliantly illustrates why people do it. Ghosting instantly eliminates all of that pressure. It provides immediate relief. When the human brain is under emotional stress and given a choice between instant relief from pain and a difficult, honest path, well, it predictably chooses the instant relief. It's the path of least discomfort.
Moving right along to Section 2, The Illusion of Intimacy. Subtitle, The Digital Interface Barrier.
So here we are transitioning to the environmental pathogen. We really have to understand how digital screens fundamentally alter the psychology of human connection. A string of texts or weeks of consistent messaging on an app creates a remarkably powerful feeling of closeness, but it's often a total illusion, because it strips away the traditional, real-world pillars of intimacy. Consider how humans used to date. You met through friends, or at work, or in your community. That built-in structure meant there was a shared social circle holding both people accountable. Today, without those mutual friends to notice or comment if someone vanishes, there's a vacuum where accountability used to live. And more importantly, there's no physical presence to anchor that person's full humanity. You're basically interacting with an avatar, a projection.
When intimacy lacks those real-world pillars, a connection is reduced to mere data on a screen. Now, while that data, those good morning texts, those shared updates, might feel incredibly emotionally significant to you in the moment, it lacks the physical weight of a real human presence. By interacting primarily through an interface, a massive psychological distance is created. And because of that distance, the act of discarding a person becomes almost entirely frictionless. It is vastly easier to delete a data thread than it is to walk away from someone you have physically stood in front of, made eye contact with, and shared a meal with. The screen literally acts as a complete emotional shield.
Which brings us to Section 3, Algorithmic Dating Fatigue. Subtitle, The 2026 Culture of Endless Swiping. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is
It perfectly captures the cultural pathogen we are dealing with, which is highly relevant to how dating actually functions right now. We are witnessing a slow, silent erosion of empathy across the dating landscape. Step 1 is saturated options. Dating apps are overflowing, constantly reminding users there is always someone else just one swipe away. It creates this paradox of choice where no one ever feels quite perfectly satisfied enough to fully commit. Then we hit Step 2, unconscious algorithm logic. Users unknowingly adopt the actual logic of the app itself. The platform gamifies human interaction, rewarding speed and volume over depth. And that leads directly to Step 3, processing humans as endless options. Just as you can swipe past a profile without a second thought, honestly kind of like endlessly scrolling past a movie on Netflix because the cover art didn't instantly thrill you, that exact behavior bleeds into real conversations. Complex human beings with deep inner experiences stop being seen as fully realized people. Instead, they are unconsciously processed as just another disposable option in an endless stream of digital commodities.
Let's slow it down for Section 4, The Ancient Alarm System. Subtitle, The Body's Reaction to Silence.
I want to pause for a moment. If you have ever been on the receiving end of a sudden disappearance, you know that the impact is not just a mental disappointment. The shock is literal. It is physical. So, I want to pose this question directly to you. Why does the silence hurt physically?
Your physiological pain is entirely valid. It is not an overreaction. When a consistent digital presence suddenly vanishes from your life without a single explanation, your nervous system registers a massive sudden loss of predictability.
Look back at our evolutionary past. When we lived in small tribes and communities, an unresolved social disappearance meant something had gone terribly wrong. It meant serious danger, death, or betrayal. So it triggers a deep, low-level threat signal right in the survival centers of the brain. But in our modern digital reality, silence is frequently just chosen as a completely frictionless lifestyle preference. The problem is, your ancient brain hasn't caught up to that 2026 technology. When the silence arrives, your nervous system frantically searches for an explanation to protect you. You start rereading texts, analyzing every past interaction, desperate for the why. And when that frantic search goes completely unresolved, it produces real, visceral anxiety. It is literally an ancient survival alarm system responding entirely accurately to a very modern social event.
Finally, we reach Section 5, the friction of honesty. Subtitle, Relocating the Meaning of Ghosting. This brings us to the final phase of our explainer, where we really need to firmly shift the narrative and the blame completely away from your own self-worth. Ghosting is not about your value. It is about their relationship with discomfort. Disappearing without an explanation tells you almost nothing about your actual worth or your value as a partner. It rarely reflects any deficiency in the person left behind. Instead, it exposes the profound emotional limitations of the ghoster. So, what does it actually say about a person when they vanish into the digital ether instead of treating you with basic respect?
People who ghost are not making an accurate statement about you. They're making an accurate statement about their own capacity to tolerate the friction of honesty.